Hey, all you action figure enthusiasts out there, JC here, and today I'm here with my buddy Logan, and we're going to be bringing you my top 5 MCU Marvel Legends for 2019, as well as my top 5 comic book based figures from Hasbro this year. So I have them out on display here. Actually, I have a little bit of a different setup than usual. I'm trying a little bit of a different format here for today's video. Also joined by my friend Logan here, Mr. Logan as he likes to be called. So he's going to be helping me with today's video. But trying this little different format here. I'm here on the couch. I've got my figures here. And like I said, I'm going to give you my top 5 choices, plus a few honorable mentions for both categories, both the MCU and the comic book based lines. Okay, so Mr. Logan has departed us, but we're going to start off by looking at my top 5 MCU figures, the movie figures. And at number 5, I am putting on the list this year the Shuri figure from Black Panther's sister. Now, technically, this was released in an Avengers wave, but overall, I think they did a really good job with this figure. I love the face sculpt. I love the little energy gauntlets that they included, which are removable. I think those were nice accessories. So, even though the character itself, I thought she was a solid character in the movie. She didn't actually play a large role in Avengers Endgame, obviously, but, I thought they did a good job with this figure, and it's why it makes number 5 on my top 5 for 2018 for MCU figures. Now, for an honorable mention, even though it didn't actually make my list, I've got the Bro Thor figure here. So this one was close to making the top 5. I was really glad that Hasbro actually decided to do this one. I was kind of surprised when they first showed it off at San Diego Comic-Con. And I think they've done a pretty good job with it, with the heavy set body build and good face likeness and everything. I do hope we get a Warrior Thor, a heavy set Warrior Thor at some point. I'm pretty sure Hasbro will give us that eventually, but glad that they went on and gave us this Bro Thor, or as I like to call him, Lebowski Thor. So while he didn't actually make the list this year, he did come in as an honorable mention. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Black Order member Corvus Glaive figure. So this one was released as a 2-pack, a Walmart exclusive 2-pack with a Loki figure. And the detailing on this figure, I think, is incredible. I think they did an outstanding job, not only with like the face sculpt, but like even like this detailing on the back of the cape that he wears. So I just think they nailed this figure dead on. You've got his spear for an accessory, and I think this is a very solid figure. Now, it was a 2-pack and a Walmart exclusive 2-pack at that, so you had to buy another Loki figure, which was a little disappointing. Not that the Loki figure was that bad, but this was just such a solid figure that I had to go on and include him on my list this year, and he comes in at number 4. Now, even though he didn't make the list, he was pretty close, but for another honorable mention, I've got another Black Order member, and this time it is the Ebony Maw figure. And again, sculpting detail is pretty good. I love the head sculpt. I love how they did the hand here, the left hand. It's very in keeping with how we saw in the Infinity War movie. And probably the biggest setback for this figure is they really didn't include any accessories with it to mimic his abilities or such. If they had done that, this almost definitely would have also made the top 5 list this year. Coming in at number 3 is the Thor Ragnarok Scourge figure. So this one, even though this wasn't a favorite character of mine from the movies, I like the Thor Ragnarok movie, but this really wasn't a favorite character of mine. But I think they just nailed the likeness to the actor so well with this head sculpt and the overall sculpting on the body. And you've got some really solid paint applications with metal wearing on his armor pieces and stuff. I just had to go on and give this one, include this one in my list. Now, this one was another figure that actually was included in a 2-pack with updated Hela, which is actually a pretty solid figure, definitely an improvement over the first Hela figure they did. So I don't like it when you have to buy a figure, when you have to buy 2 figures to get one. But, again, this was definitely a very solid figure with this head sculpt and everything, which is why it comes in at number 3. For another honorable mention, I have here the Spider-Man Far From Home Mysterio figure. So probably not quite as good as the comic book based Mysterio figure that Hasbro did, but I thought they did a pretty solid job here representing the character and how he appeared in the movie. It would have been nice if we'd gotten an unhelmeted head sculpt, since he doesn't really wear the helmet that often in the movie. But nevertheless, I think they've done a solid job with this one. Maybe not quite good enough to make the top 5, but again, it definitely is warranting an honorable mention here. Coming in at number 3 is the Iron Patriot figure from Avengers Endgame. Now, this is actually kind of the second time that they did this figure. The first time they did an inaccurate War Machine version based on concept art, so I understand why they did it, but it really wasn't how he appeared in the movie. So they went back and did it again, and this time they got it pretty good, and I like the coloring and everything. You know, Iron Patriot's a favorite of mine, you know, kind of the Captain America flair and everything, so I definitely like it when we get Iron Patriot figures. And, you know, nice size to this figure and everything, even though it wasn't a Build-A-Figure. You know, they gave it a really good size like you see in the movie. You've got the cannons and such. So overall, this is, I think, probably one of the nicest Avengers Endgame figures they've done so far, and it's why it comes in at number 2. For my 2 last MCU honorable mentions, I've got the Iron Man Mark 85 and the Rescue figure that Hasbro did this year. Both are very solid figures. The only reason why the Iron Man figure is not on the list is because they did not include any accessories like the back piece that you see him have in the movie. If they had included that with this figure, I think this definitely would have made my list, maybe even made number 1. It is definitely one of the best Iron Man movie figures that Hasbro has done to date. It's nice and solid, the good to paint applications and everything, and I'm sure Hasbro will get around to re-releasing this figure with added accessories like they did with the Mark 50, and maybe when they do that, then the figure will make my top 5 list. But as it is, without any of the accessories, I just couldn't find myself to put it on the list. But it does get an honorable mention, as does the Rescue figure. Again, a solid figure with nice paint applications. I like the metallic blues that they used on this figure. You do have the flaps that open up, but no other accessories really with this figure other than, you know, you get the alternate back piece, but really no other alternate accessories. What really would have made this figure, probably would have gotten this figure on the top 5 list, is if they had included an unhelmeted or an open helmet Pepper Potts head sculpt. If they had done that, I think I definitely would have put this one on my top 5. Okay, so now for number 1. Now, honestly, this figure probably would not have ranked number 1, and I probably could make this say the same thing about my comic book base number 1 as well. But if it wasn't for the fact that it's based on my favorite character, that's really what puts it over the top and puts it at number 1. I do think it is a solid figure, probably one of the best movie figures of this character they've done, but not necessarily, you know, better than some of the others, other than it's just based on my favorite character. So at number 1, if you haven't guessed, it is Captain America from Avengers Endgame. This was released as a Walmart exclusive. You got the hammer, which they cleverly hid behind the shield, so you didn't actually see it, and it didn't spoil the movie, which was nice. I think this, like I said, is probably the best MCU Captain America figure they've done to date. The only thing that really would have made this figure better is if we'd gotten the broken shield. I understand that they didn't have access to seeing that before they made this figure, which is why we didn't get it. You know, maybe down the road we'll get a version with that. But they did include the hammer, which was cool. And overall, I just think this was a solid figure. So again, maybe not quite as solid to actually be number 1, other than that it's based on Cap. So that's really, for me, what puts it over the top. You know, if you're not a huge Cap fan, I probably wouldn't say you'd have this as your number 1. But for me, it is. And again, definitely a solid figure. And my favorite, I guess I would say, for MCU this year. Okay, so now moving on to my top 5 comic book based figures for 2019. And in all honesty, I think probably we got better overall comic book based figures this year than we did movie figures. Though it's kind of funny, I don't have as many honorable mentions for the comic book based figures, mainly because there's probably so many that I just felt like it would make the video too long. So I only did like 1 or 2 honorable mentions for the comic book based. But in general, I do feel like the comic book based figures that we got this year were stronger than the movie-based ones. Now, we also got a lot of junk from Hasbro this year, a lot of repaints with the Marvel 80th anniversary. I do hope that maybe Hasbro kind of tones that back a little bit this year. Definitely feeling a little bit of oversaturation with the Marvel Legends towards the end of this year. But, you know, we definitely got some good stuff. And this, at number 5 here, so my number 5 pick here is the X-Men Mr. Sinister figure. Now, my honorable mention that I'm going to come out with here in just a minute was really close to taking this spot. It was really, you know, a very close tie between these two. But at the end of the day, I felt like I had to give it to Mr. Sinister here. It's one of my favorite X-Men villains, and I think Hasbro just did a really solid job with this figure overall, with the face sculpt, with the way they've done the cape and everything. and just, the proportions on the body are really nice as well. So, even though Toy Biz did a pretty solid one back in the day, this one is the superior figure, and I don't see how you could really make Sinister much better than what we got here. So for that reason, he comes in at number 5. Now, as I said, for this honorable mention, this was actually very close to coming in at number 5, taking the number 5 spot. The thing that probably detracted me, that I don't like about this figure and why it didn't make number 5 is the face sculpt with the open mouth. I just don't like that much. If they had made this like an articulated jaw, then I think this figure definitely would have made the top 5. Otherwise, it's a very solid figure. It's a nice update to the Toy Biz Beast figure. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this figure for a long time, and overall I think Hasbro did a solid job. It's just, again, I really don't like the open mouth as much, and so that's why it did not make the top 5. But very close. It almost knocked Mr. Sinister off, just not quite. Okay, coming in at number 4 is a Build-A-Figure. So this is probably one of the best Build-A-Figures that Hasbro's done in a long time, and Hasbro's actually done quite a few good Build-A-Figures, but I really love this Kingpin figure. Kingpin is such a great villain. He takes on Punisher, he takes on Spider-Man, he takes on Daredevil. So, he's really a great villain to have to the collection. Toy Biz did a pretty good one back in the day, but we definitely needed an updated version. Great size to him. Love how they've done this suit. Pretty good articulation for the size of figure, and love the head sculpt more than anything. Had some pretty cool accessories. I don't have the accessories here. He had the little cane with the diamond on top, which was a nice added touch. And then if you got the Professor Xavier with the hover chair, then you got the Shadow King alternate head that you could use on this body. So that was an added nice touch as well. But overall, this is a very great, solid figure. It is a great interpretation of the Kingpin, which is a great Marvel villain. And it's why it comes in at number 4 for my top 5 comic-based figures for 2019. Now, for my second honorable mention for comic book-based figures, I've got the Night Thrasher figure here, which was released as one of the a figure for a Spider-Man wave. One of the original members of the New Warriors, the leader of the New Warriors. So that in its own right is one of the reasons why I really like this figure. I've also just always liked this character and liked this outfit, and I think Hasbro did a pretty good job with it. You've got the skateboard, which is removable. I'm glad they added that as well. So hopefully we'll end up getting, like this year, we'll get another new Warrior member, maybe a Firestar. I think we're long overdue for a Firestar figure. And even though I think this is a nice figure, it wasn't quite nice enough to make the top 5. Probably not enough new here with this figure, but still very good representation of the character, which is why it gets an honorable mention for my 2019 list. Okay, coming in at number 3. So Hasbro graced us with some Alex Ross based figures this year, also based on classic looks for some great characters like Thor here. This was part of the 80th anniversary. This was really, the main core of the 80th anniversary offerings that we got from Hasbro. And I think, they did a great job here. Probably the best Thor figure they've done to date. It's a great representation of the classic Thor. You've got the inscription on the hammer. It's very true, very reminiscent of the original Toy Biz Thor figure. And, like I said, I would love Hasbro to do a modern version of Thor with the gold arm. But if you like classic Thor, then you don't really get much better than this. Okay, now for my final 2 reveals, my number 2 and my number 1 picks for comic book based top 5s of 2019. I'm going to present them at the same time. And the reason for that is that I'm kind of, just like with the MCU, my number 1 is really more because it's my favorite character as opposed to the actual better figure. And the number 2 figure is actually, if I was really being honest, is probably the better made figure. So for number 2 and number 1, I've got the Iron Man and Captain America figures, the Alex Ross based ones that were part of the 80th anniversary that Hasbro did this year to go along with Thor. And, this Iron Man figure, the head sculpt is incredible. The unmasked head sculpt of Tony Stark, the best comic book based unmasked head sculpt I think that Hasbro's ever done. Even, Toy Biz, or really any company for that matter that's done, for a comic book base. And then you've got the helmeted head. I love the metallic golds and everything. So just an awesome figure. It is based on a classic armor. I would love to see this kind of figure done for a more modern armor, or the red and silver version. That's probably my favorite Iron Man figure one that maybe I'm hoping to see in 2020. So if we get that kind of quality with that, that probably is definitely going to make my top 5 list next year. But Iron Man, as it is, I am putting him in at number 2. And then, of course, number 1 is going to be the Captain America figure. I love the sculpting detail with the chainmail. And overall, I just think it's a nice looking figure. Now, this does primarily use that Cap Wolf mold, so there's not, this is more new with this Iron Man figure than the Captain America figure. That's probably why, if I was being in all honesty, why I would put Cap at number 2 if it wasn't that he was my favorite character, because you're just not getting as much new with this figure as you are with the Iron Man figure. But nevertheless, I love what they've done with the sculpting on the chainmail, and just overall, it's a great looking figure. It was a Walmart exclusive, but still, I think it's a figure that any Cat fan or really any Avengers fan would need to add to their collection. Okay, so that's it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What were your favorite figures for 2019? And what are you looking forward to seeing in 2020? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what you think of this new format. Thinking I might start doing reviews with this kind of format. So I'd love to get your input on that. And that is it for today. I lost all my help, though I do have Mr. G has joined me here. So I don't know if you guys have ever met Mr. G, but he's making a rare appearance here. His real name's Garrett, but he prefers to be called Mr. G, so that's what we're going to go by. So as always, follow me here, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, and until next time, guys, I'll catch you later.
Hey, thanks for watching today's video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so alerted every time I upload a new video. And be sure to head over to the Toy News International and Marvelous News message boards communities. It's a great place to talk toys and win cool contests like $100 store credits to Big Bad Toy Store. And remember, action figures are great.